So what's a wonk like me doing writing chick tracts? I mean, I'm a wonk. I am a wonk. Can you hear me okay? Is it all clear? All right. A wonk. I love to study. Do you know one of the things I love to do? I love to be stuck at a copy machine, and I keep on trying to figure more and more efficient ways to copy things. Faster and faster, and to me that's actually fun. And while I'm doing that, I can pray, I can think, I can go through ideas, and I'm just going zip, 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 just as long as nobody gets in my way. The hardest thing being at Chick Publications is having somebody else do it, because I know they're going to miss that one page. Yeah. I don't have OCD. I don't have OCD. I really like things to be accurate, and it's important, and I'll get to the scripture in a little bit. It's important that when somebody tells us a story of any kind about scripture, especially about God, about an experience, that you got to find out, is it true? Is it not true? It's not good enough. Hear a story. You got to check a story. We have modern journalism right now. It's not really journalism. It's people who are owned by corporations, who have people who owe other people. And there you go. And they tell them, you will report this. They've been caught in front of green screens, saying they're in places they're not. Two reporters could be in the same parking lot. You can see the car going behind the one and going right along behind the other, and they say they're 500 miles away. You know, there's things going on where integrity is really important, and I am a wonk. I hate not knowing stuff. That's why I can't get into sports, because I'd be focused on that. So instead, I'm focused on Bible. I just can't not know. Can I share one thing from before I repented and won the victory? Now, first I have to tell you, back on June 7th, 1972, as a 9-year-old kid in front of my apartments in Ontario, California, I was sitting in the grass, and somebody I've never known before opens up the little thing and comes, I don't know what you call it, gate. That's what you call it. He walks in, it's got a big squeaky spring, and he looks down at me and he says, "You want to read a comic?" I said, "Sure," because you're talking Mad Magazine fanatic here. I got my first Mad Magazine in a church. There's a vlog about that. You can see it on YouTube. The minister gave it to me. Anyway, so this was your life. And he said, "Would you read it to me?" Does that sound complicated? Would you read it to me? And so I read this thing to him from front to back. And he said, "Would you like to receive Jesus as your Savior?" I said, "Yeah. Okay." So we just followed the little instructions on there. Did I have to know a lot? No. Did the guy have to know a lot? I don't think so. Do you know I still don't know his name? I am 54 years old. I was 9. But that guy did something that changed my life. Yes, he told me to go to a church that taught Jesus Christ, so I went to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It was on the sign, and it was one of my 2 friends. But I will tell you, I was born again. You know how I know? In one way. I didn't have the burning in the bosom. I just followed it because other people did it. And there's a number of people who've come out of that and some very deep, dark things. It said that burning in the bosom is a devil. But I couldn't be inhabited by a devil, could I? Not if I had the Holy Ghost. In fact, for 4 years I was a Mormon. I got to learn about that from the inside. I told people about things going on in the temple because I was there that nobody ever talked about. So when I came out in 1980 as a repentant believer, not out of Mormonism, but out of all the things I'm going to list, when I came out in 1980, I had a whole wealth of knowledge that nobody talked about because I was there. After that, my dad pulled me out of 4 years. So we moved in with my dad. Mom and dad got divorced when I was 3.5. And that was probably a good thing. And when we moved in with my dad, because he wanted to give us an alternate perspective, and if you know anything about alternate lifestyles, you know it was very alternate. And when he gave us this alternate perspective, he also pulled me into religious science. So then I got into religious science, and from there we moved out to the desert because we were going to make a little geodesic dome and live with the nature. Anyway, so we went there. I went to Palm Springs High School, and while we were in Palm Springs area out in Sky Valley where we lived, my dad had a voice student. He was a voice teacher and a very good one, by the way. He had a voice student who took the EST training. Does anybody know what that is? Ever heard of the EST training? Werner Erhard, John Paul Rosenberg, con man, became a religious guy and comes up with this occultic system that brainwashes you. It's kind of part Marines boot camp and part Scientology. But it's all this kind of stuff to make you believe you are God. And I fell into this stuff. And after that, that little voice, the one that sits in your head, as they said in the training, that says, what voice? You know, the conscience, that went away. And another voice came in its place and started talking to me. Now, I don't believe it was inside me, but it sure was darn close because I could hear it. And it told me stuff, and I had abilities all of a sudden. I was in high school, okay? So I'm a junior in high school, going into my senior year. And I could walk into the Palm Springs Library, and there's a book there, and I just opened the book up, and I just put my finger on it, and what I was just talking about was where my finger was. One day I was with the Unity minister. Oh, I also joined the Unity Church. I left the Religious Science Church to Unity School of Christianity, which is another occultic group. And while I was talking to the pastor, minister, Ronell Sinstead, we were talking about some metaphysical whatever, and I just grabbed this one green book, opened it up, put my finger on it, said some stuff, put my finger, and I showed him where my finger was, and what I just said was in this book I'd never touched before. And he said, nobody can do that unless the Spirit has led him, and he says, let me show you something. He took me into his back office and found me a book. I now found it's available on archive.org. It's actually available. Anybody can get it. But he pulled it out, and he said, don't tell your dad I gave this to you. This is only for you because you're chosen. So I read this thing. And ultimately what it told you is that your mission in life, if you're at that spot, you should realize and say, Psalm 46, to yourself, be still and know, I am God. Does that sound familiar? Ye shall be as... Yeah, we're back to Genesis 3 again, aren't we? But at that point, I was told to do rituals and things. The spirits told me to do stuff. I learned doctrines that, and not until 2 years into Bible college, I found out, oh my goodness, those are real doctrines. You know, the Bible talks about doctrines of devils. They're real. I had no education in them, but there they were. I was just told them. So this is weird stuff. Well, one day, I came over to Palm Springs Library, and I start playing music, which is Christian sounding, but I'm just playing, but it wasn't. And this guy walks up to me. He has a knapsack, sets it over the palm tree, walks over, looks at me and says, do you have a purpose to your music? And I'm thinking inside, yes, I'm a God in my universe. I caused it. I pretended not to cause it so I could play in it. It's S training. I'm in my final reincarnation. I'm going to become a Christ self, like the one in the Bible. I'll take on the Christ self. That's the goal of the religions. That was in the green book. He gave me the green book, by the way. I didn't have to buy it. He gave me that. And this guy looks at me, and I don't know. He didn't really say anything but this. For 34 years, I asked questions. And for 34 years, I did not stop asking questions. I thought, okay. I looked down at my music, and I looked up, and he was gone. No knapsack, no hymn. Now, about 12 feet away, we had a little grassy knoll about so high. Now, if he played air raid, jumped his body and threw it on the other side, I still would have seen his backside hanging up. So he was gone. Somebody wanted me to ask questions. And honestly, from that day to this, that's where I live. I will ask any question. I will question myself. Before I come out here and speak to you, I've questioned myself and double questioned and triple questioned. And then when I make a mistake on my video and I have to go and change it in the subtitles, I'm going, because I hate it. I have to know the truth. And if I get it wrong, I have to fix it. So That was valuable to Jack at one point when he figured out what I did, because he heard me talking with his friend Ron in the other office. He'd be around there hearing the conversations we had and how I continually was correcting things and trying to find true information. I'd memorized chick tracts over the years. I actually walked in occasionally and would talk to Donnie Eubanks, the former nun, and she was there in the front, and I'd start telling her, so on page so-and-so of this, the track here, you change this from this to that and this, and she's like, okay. But when the time came that God brought me into Chick Publications, I ended up being able to change things myself. And I'll tell you one more thing. I have to live with it. I have to live with it. It's what happened. I was trying to be like my mom, a bilingual Spanish-English teacher. I was teaching kindergarten, which I absolutely loved, in Fontana. And while I was there, I told you guys already? Okay. While I was there, I saw the last kid out, and it's a year-round school. Do you have that here, year-round? They don't have summer. They have 10 weeks and a month off, 10 weeks and a month off, and you kind of work your way around the year like that? Okay, you actually have seasons. Yeah. Welcome to Canada, eh? So so I let the last kid out and close the door, and I turn around. I want you to go to Chick Publications at 3 o'clock. Actually, it wasn't I want you. It was just go to Chick Publications at 3 o'clock. And there's nobody in the room. I have no reason to go. No reason to be there whatsoever. Get out my cell phone, call my wife. I said, Deborah, the Lord just told me to go to Chick Publications at 3 o'clock. She says, well, then I guess you better go to Chick Publications at 3 o'clock. I got there. Just before I got there, I'm going off of Arrow under Archibald. And I said, Lord, what's he going to do? Offer me a job? And I turn the car and I go down there. And I don't remember, I'd only seen him how many times? 4. I've only seen Jack 4 times. And I go in, I drive into the parking lot. It's 3:19. I'm going, okay, because I had also prayed again, and he said be either before 3:30. That's what I got, and I went, I'm just going to go with it because there's nobody else in the room. So I'm going. I mean, what could I lose, right? So I went there, walk in the front where the little bookstore thing is, and I'm going, okay, now what do? I already own most of the books. I mean, what do I do now? I'm saying nothing. And then Donnie Eubanks, the one I told you about, says, David, come on back. Okay. So she opens the door. I come back into the graphics department. I'm standing there. Still don't know what to do, but I am standing in the graphics department. And I still look down at the table while she sits down and gets ready to do some work on a new tract. And Jack walks in and says, David, come into my office. I want to talk to you. Come here. Take a look at this. It was a white notebook. This is a tract I'm doing called In the Beginning. I want you to read it. Tell me what you think of it. So I'm reading it through and I'm going, oh, well, see, when I studied evolution under Dr. David Jacobs at UC Irvine, the date was like 240 million years instead of this other one. I don't think that's the right date. Do you want me to check it? He says, okay. Go in the other room where the people who take the phone calls are. And is there a free computer? And there was. I looked it up. And I looked up the date and came back. And I said, yeah, that was the date. And he says, David, how would you like to work with me? Not until last December, after Jack died, we were talking with his widow at their house, and the dogs had just gotten over their grief. If you watch my video, video series, you don't know Jack on YouTube, or gotten the book, you don't know Jack. The dogs actually really reacted when he died. But they were finally calming down. And then we're with Susie, and she's giving more pictures. I have like 1,200 now. All the people saying, there's no pictures of Jack. Ha, ha, ha. I have piles of them, and a lot of them are in the book. She's showing this. She's talking with Debbie and me. And she says, you know, I was the one who told Jack to hire you. He'd come home and tell about this guy who's doing all this stuff about Bible and learning all these things and fixing and correcting and stuff. He says, you need him. You should work with him. We knew nothing about this. We never heard about this until after Jack went to heaven. I never even I didn't know. But all I knew is I was all by myself in a kindergarten room. Next thing you know, I'm writing tracts with Jack. I believe in the power of God. I believe that God calls. And I believe if God's calling you to do something, you need to do that. In the Bible, when he says get up and go, the next verse says they got up and went. There's only one verse where the guy says, yeah, I'll go, but he doesn't, right? And he didn't do the will of his Father. That's the only one in the Bible. There's 1,189 chapters, and there's only one example, and that's only in a parable. Think about that. So that's why I'm with Jack. And after that, what do I call myself? What do I do? Well, you're a research consultant. That's a good name. It's got 2 words. So that's what I became. Then pretty soon, one day Jack sits down in a chair and he's all, did I tell you about that? When he sits down in the chair? It was after lunch with Ron and George. George is the co-founder in 1968 on, and the other people in 1970. And he said, what's going on? He said, they want me to write a Halloween tract. Yeah, and? For kids. And I don't have an idea. I said, I do. He says, good, I'm going home. He got up, he grabbed his stuff, and walked right out the door. I just started writing on the wall, it's a whiteboard. But I started writing on the whiteboard, and I started writing all this stuff up, and just wrote this whole tract out. I had it in my mind, I got it all in, and then I couldn't work with Jack because he was not here anymore. So when I finished it, I picked up my stuff and went home. Came in the next morning, and Jack and Ron had looked at it and said, "Oh, let's just tweak this little thing here, this little thing here." Became the Little Ghost. Anybody seen that Halloween tract called The Little Ghost? That was the first. And just a few months before he died, I asked him, "Why did you pick me to be your successor?" I found out after my grandma died, my mom gave me a letter Jack had written to my grandma. She's the only one who prayed for me all those years I was in the cult and Mormon and everything else. The only one who prayed for me, never stopped. Jack called her Spunky. But she said that in the letter, he said, "I have chosen David to be my successor." 2007, it was before my grandma died. If God has called you, you need to respond to that call. But that is what started it. I don't even know his name. I never saw him again. I don't even know what he was thinking. Why was he doing it towards sunset? Why did he walk there? He didn't go anywhere else. As soon as we prayed, he walked away. I never even found out what church he went to. Nothing. It's not enough. Yes, it is. Because it's God who does the saving, not man. So, want to see what I found? I want you to see what I found when, even though I believed Chris Pinto was wrong, I believe Scrivener, I now found out Scrivener lied. I couldn't believe all these things I've been finding out. One step at a time. People I thought I trusted. I thought that Tischendorf was absolutely truthful, but I found out that he lied, and you'll see it for yourself as I show you what I found. First of all, we have a blank slide. What happened? I see it. Here we go. What? This is the weirdest thing. Slides have been disappearing. I went and reestablished the slides while it was during break, and now one of them has disappeared. But let's go right here. Stephen Avery, please stand up again, Stephen. Stephen Avery, I owe so much to him. Him talking back and forth with Chris Pinto. He sent me a text one day saying, "David, what do you think of this?" And he sent me links to this place, codexsinaiticus.org. You can check it for yourself, okay? You don't have to believe anything I say. Go look. And it's in my book. You'll see that too. But right here, he said, "Do you think somebody used some Pepsodent?" Those pages are awfully white, aren't they? So I looked at that page, and then the first thing I did is I spent 4 hours just looking at all the shifts between the sections that Tischendorf took away and the sections that we called Sinaiticus when he published it. You see a difference? This is the one that he took in 1844. That's the beginning of the section. This is the end of the section that he took in 1844. The second section, this is the beginning page of the second section he took in 1844. And this is the end page of the second section that he took in 1844. Do you see anything different between these pages? I'm just going to go back and forth for a second. Be scientists for me. One is whiter than the other. So, oops, I'll get back to that. Here's the question. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Now, some people like to say, and they told Stephen this, oh, well, it's just different weather in the places where the manuscripts were. Right, so the place with the bad weather, it stays white when it goes to Saxony, Germany, and the place with the nice, hot, dry weather gets all weathered. Does that make sense to you? No. So let's go back again. First Chronicles duplicate. That's because later on they found some stuff from 1975 that had First Chronicles a second time. There are 2 First Chronicles sections, but not all of it, and I'll get back to that because that's awfully fun. And then, but you go right here. What I wanted to do is go to the bottom word here in this verse, which is in Tobit in the Apocrypha, and to the top verse here. And I went through all the connection spots, and I asked a simple question. Does the verse connect? If it ends on this line, is it a new sentence here, or does it just continue the verse? And I checked it. And here's Jeremiah 10:25 here, and here's the same verse 10:25 right here. Okay? There's Lamentations and Joel. That's a little different, but that is the next page that's known as Sinaiticus. That's another story, and I'll get to the Mosaic in a minute. Okay, back again. So the second thing I asked, if you lighten a page, what's going to happen to the ink? It's going to lighten too, right? So what I should find is if somebody lightened this page, this ink should be lighter. Duh. It's not. I went back and forth and back and forth. That's actually darkened there. But and again, the screen does what it does when you see it in. But when you look at these pages, this is the same. It didn't become, how did that happen? There's another possibility. What if, when I got to this page, I really wondered about something. Because it looked like my seminary textbooks. Yes, I'm revealing something about myself. You know, you're drinking some coffee, and then you're not drinking it anymore, but your book is. They're the next page in the series. We're going from Jeremiah 10:25, starts in here and continues right here. So only the pages that Tischendorf took away are white. But I'll show you more of that in a minute. You'll enjoy this. But now, I thought, it looks like when I used to spill, I have a couple books like this still. Most of them I gave away because I'm smart. But it looks like somebody spilled something, and then they started spreading it out. And then, I wish I could show you the whole thing, because I have the whole Sinaiticus up here, but I can't get it on the screen. But if you flip the pages, you can do it yourself. Go to codexsinaiticus.org. It's right there. And they tried to take off, and I made a video saying, oh, they made a mistake. Oh, look, it looks like it's kind of missing. Call all these people. Tell all these people who paid money for it that they need to fix this. And within a day, all the stuff that started disappearing, amazingly started coming back. So I guess they watched the video, huh? Or at least they got the phone calls. It looked like somebody took this and spread it out, and it kind of splattered on the page. And then I looked back, and it looked like somebody continued to spread that stuff. Then I turned back, and it looked like somebody continued to spread that stuff. And looked back, and it looked like somebody continued to spread, and they got better and better at it. The further away it got, the more even it got. Check for yourself. Don't believe me. Go check. Then they did this side. But this side, they got better at it, and they started spreading it, and it got more and more even, and it went along and along and along. So I thought, and I said to Stephen, he's right there, I think this is the original color. Somebody darkened Sinaiticus to make it look older. But it's not just this. That is the entire Codex Sinaiticus. Please ignore this part right here because it's a Mosaic program and it kind of repeated the first 4 pieces, and those are from other places. Yeah, have fun. I got 3 different pictures to show you. This first one is the Codex Sinaiticus Mosaic as it would appear it's a low, I mean, you can only do so much res. I mean, you can't make it 20 feet. But that's the entire Codex Sinaiticus right up to there. Do you notice anything? I noticed a section that looked awfully lighter than the other. Now, I added shadow. So I'm telling you in advance, I added shadow because I wanted to clarify the contrast. What would happen if I added shadow to it? Does that look like an accident to you? Do you think Tischendorf just happened to grab the only places that just happened to be lighter than the rest? Or do you think that maybe somebody colored the rest of Sinaiticus? And if I do one more thing and add highlights, you can see that the New Testament, I can find the New Testament. It's a different color, isn't it? This section is slightly different. This part here and the rest of this is the same. This goes together. These go together. This is different. There are obviously stages in production going on here, or stages in the coloration going on here. I'm looking at them. I couldn't avoid it. Can you? Now, Tischendorf in 1859, or testifying about 1859, said the pages were yellowed. But he himself knew that the pages that he took in 1844 were not yellowed, but he had not revealed yet that those pages were from the same document. Those pages were put in two different countries, so you couldn't compare it like we can now. Since 2009, we're the first people ever to be able to see all this stuff, right? The Codex Sinaiticus project, we have to thank people for this. They did a lot of hard work. See, next to these things, you'll see color bars. They literally put color bars next to them, and they use big computers and scientific instruments and careful plates and lighting and everything to get these colors right. If you buy, however, when I told you Jack McElroy sent me the Codex Sinaiticus as they published it in 2010, do you know all the pages look the same color? They hid this and this completely. You would never know. And it was when Jack McElroy sent me that, and I went, Jack, thank you so much. Because somebody knew this and covered it up. But let's go back even further. Tischendorf said the pages were yellowed. But the pages he picked up in 1844 and had from 1844 to 59 were what color? Say it with me. White. Who colored Sinaiticus? Let's say it's not Tischendorf. If it's not Tischendorf, did he forget the color of the thing he'd spent years with? Is that why he didn't tell right away that this was part of this? It came out later, but they were still separated in other countries, and nobody got to see the real ones. They only got to see a typed up copy of it. This is the very next page. No, it's not paper. It's animal skin. You have to take animal skin, you have to kill it, you have to tan it, then you have to scrape it really thin, you have to pull it and stretch it out. I have it in my videos. By the way, everything you want to know about how this stuff was put together, as much as I can give you, except for the threading of the covers, which weren't there. Other than those things, you can find on my videos. I have it. I go through it one step at a time. But you don't mind me doing this, do you? See, this is what people are basing all the changes in their Bible on, believing that this is ancient. If Tischendorf believed it was ancient, why did he color it? If he didn't color it, he knew who did. Why didn't he say something? Why didn't he say, hey, somebody colored this? That's the stupidest thing ever. If I have the oldest and best thing in the world, why would I mess it up? If you have the Gettysburg Address in your personal possession and your family heirlooms, would you pour coffee on it? Or lemon juice? I asked Stephen, what about counterfeiting in the 1800s? And Stephen is an awesome researcher. He started checking it out. And he found they use these different things. Exactly what I said it looked like is exactly what they did in order to make things look older in the 1800s. He either did it, or he knows who did it, but why did he do it? Is it possible that he figured out what it really was, which is what my book's about that's coming out. Is it possible Tischendorf figured out what it really was, but also realized he wasn't going to get his fame and fortune that he wanted, and he wasn't going to get his audience with the Pope that he wanted, and he wasn't going to get to see the Vaticanus that he wanted, because he thought the Vaticanus was real, remember? So he'd be willing to pull off an incredible feat. Take something that he knew was not ancient and lie about it. But he didn't just lie about it to himself, or to the big public. He even lied about it in the letters he wrote to his family, to his brother, and to his engaged to-be wife for 30-something years. Not until I had a friend do that to me, lie to me for 30-something years, and find out that he was completely not the person I thought he was. Just devastated our family. Not until that happened did I understand what this guy did. By the way, that happened just before I found this out. And I think that God did that. Not God made him do this or made my friend be a bad person, but let the timing be good. And God is good about timing. Let me go on. People try to tell you that Constantine the emperor wanted 50 Bibles. How many people have heard the story of the 50 Bibles? Anybody? Nobody? Bible college students? A couple people. Okay, the story is that Constantine wanted to have 50 Bibles. Eusebius tells the story. In this story, he says that he wanted it to be of the finest calligraphy. He wanted it to be in 3s and 4s. How many columns do you think Vaticanus has? How many columns do you think Sinaiticus has? Tischendorf came up with a story that this was the fulfillment. Well, that would lift him up even more, wouldn't it? There are 3 things every minister should avoid. They are the gold, the girls, and the glory. He already had the girl. He still wanted gold. I have books where they say, he didn't want any of that stuff. He was such a nice guy. And I have other ones that are biographies of people who actually like him and say, oh, he was so full of this. He wanted this. Philip Schaff, who was behind the American Standard Version. Philip Schaff, and he was a multi-religionist. He was a one-worlder. He created the Society of World Religions, this big gathering of world religions that happened in 1893-4. And he wrote about Tischendorf, that Tischendorf was so into himself that he wrote all his accolades, all the things about himself, all his degrees or conferred degrees or honorary degrees and whatever he could come up with in as many as 10 lines on his title page of his book. Oh no, he's not into the glory at all. But he was into the biggest thing of all, the candy-coated carrot, and that was the Codex Vaticanus. Because a guy named Tregellus got to see it before him. Remember Chris told you? Tregellus got to see it before him, and he was insanely jealous. And he also had a horrible temper. So, do you know how you cover up lies sometimes? Is by getting angry at people who challenge you. And believe it or not, he did that a lot. Okay, does this look fit for a king? This right here is Isaiah. That's Isaiah chapter 1. It even says Isaiah in that wonderful handwriting. Would you give this to a king? If this is supposed to be one of the 50 Bibles, I was taught this. Were you taught this? I was taught this. I have degrees in it. I never saw the Sinaiticus, and you could look at that too. I have all the videos, and you can see it for yourself what I did see, which is the last page of John, and that was it. That's all of Sinaiticus we saw, but we had to trust them to change all our Bibles because of it. Next video, then the last session, I will show you a major doctrine changed just by Codex Sinaiticus on a single page. And people don't realize what it is. But my own professor, by the way, 2 years ago did a seminar on Sinaiticus where his other prize student, I was his prize student, and this other guy was another one. He went and got his piled higher and deeper PhD. And he went on to tell about the doctrine that it actually changed. And that's in the video. You can see that for yourself. But then, again, look at that. Here, this is Isaiah 1:1 that you just saw to 27, as it is in the Sinaiticus. But this is what we saw. This is what Tischendorf published. Wasn't photographs. It was retyping every symbol, except, oh my goodness, all that stuff isn't there because he wrote it in Latin at the end of the volume in subnotes that people don't necessarily read, that are completely disconnected from the text. So you think, we thought, and we were told, this is the Sinaiticus. Yeah, they got some notes on it and stuff, but it's the Sinaiticus. No, that's the Sinaiticus. This is his reproduction. Do you see a difference? This is what we were taught. We were fed this as being true. We thought they're the greatest scribes. How many of you heard people say that the Alexandrians were the greatest scribes in the world and all this other stuff? Well, does that look great to you? Now look at this. This is the same page, okay? This is 1 Chronicles 18:15 to 2 Esdras 9:11. The thing is, it goes right to this point here and stops right there, and that is the middle of 1 Corinthians 19:17, and right here is Ezra 9:9. Starts right here. And then it goes page for page, chapter 10, 11, 12, 10, chapter 10, and Second Esdras is just Ezra and Nehemiah is one book. Then it goes in Nehemiah 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and goes on like that. In the same line. How can you do that? Anybody? So I had to think about this. How could you do that? The only way is if you have a piece of paper here and a piece of paper here, and you're not paying attention. You're following one piece of paper. It's sitting separate from another one. You get to the bottom of it, and you're switching from the number of columns and everything. Otherwise, you'd notice it, right? So you're being a calligrapher. You're writing things down, and it comes to this end of the line. Then you go to the top, and you keep on writing. Otherwise, why would you make that mistake? And it means you weren't even paying attention to the Greek when you're doing it. You're only focusing on the calligraphy of it. Do you understand what I'm saying? How could you make a mistake? That's like starting in the Gospel of John and then suddenly being at the end of Acts in the same verse. Do you think you'd notice? Or starting at the end of Acts and then being in 2 Corinthians. Do you think that you might notice that? So then there's this little thing here, and it was partially erased and rubbed out. And then there's another thing over here, and there's another thing over here, another thing over here, and then there's this little triangle right here. Let me help you. That cross over there, and then there's 3 crosses at the bottom, but the 3 crosses at the bottom are where this note is, not up where that 1 cross is. You understand what I'm saying? 1 cross, 3 cross, 2 crosses over here. But it says here, at the sign of the 3 crosses is the end of the 7 leaves, which are superfluous and not a part of Esdras. In other words, somebody's been copying 7 whole leaves. What is a leaf? A leaf is this thing. 1 leaf. Okay? It has a recto, right, front, and a verso. You turn to get to it. It's turning, verso. Recto, verso, 1 leaf. There are 7 whole leaves that somebody went through 1 Chronicles and suddenly jumped to 2 Esdras 9:9, which is Ezra 9:9. And then all they do is they write a cross, and it says at the sign of the 3 crosses. No, this is the sign of the 3 crosses. Not even the note's right. Whoever wrote that wasn't really paying attention. It might have been a teenager. It was interesting. I think it was, and I think I know who he was. He made a mistake. He wrote a note, and he says stuff, and if you really pay attention to what he says and what's on there and the rubbing out and the redoing and stuff, he's saying, man, we just totally messed this one up. And just kept on going. Because they didn't go back and do the first 9 chapters of Ezra. It just started at 9:9 and kept going. Maybe because they didn't think this was the final copy. Maybe because it was only a first draft. Codex Sinaiticus, the story of the world's oldest Bible by David Parker. Quote, it has been claimed that the Codex may even have been written at the emperor's express command. The reason for this is a passage in Eusebius' Life of Constantine. Quote, we make known to you, this is Eusebius, we make known to you he's saying, Eusebius is saying, Constantine said. So this is Parker saying that Eusebius said that Constantine said. Are you with me so far? It's supposed to be Constantine. We make known to you that you are to commission 50 volumes which are to be bound in leather, easy to read, and for convenience, portable. They are to be written by craftsmen who are both calligraphers and used to writing accurately. They are to be copies of the divine scriptures, which you well know must be available for reading in church. Okay? And then he says, thus the emperor instructed, action immediately followed word, and we sent him 3s and 4s in curiously worked bindings. And then people speculated about what those 3s and 4s were, and Tischendorf had this belief that 4 meant the number of columns, because Vaticanus had 3. This isn't sounding suspicious in any way. So, to be bound in leather, easy to read. Did that look nice? Portable? It's this big. Watch my videos. The one I have is this big like this, and it's 80%, so it's really this big. And then you open it, okay? But mine just opens like this. Well, not mine, it's Jack's, but I'm borrowing it. Okay, so written by craftsmen who were, get this, calligraphers, artistic writers, used to writing accurately. Did that look accurate to you? Copies of the divine scriptures and available for reading in church. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. The Sinaiticus didn't have a cover. Okay. There is one. Now we're going to talk about Tischendorf's story. I'm jumping here. I want to get to Tischendorf. You guys want to know about this guy. He's the one guy that I thought, I literally prayed about this when I was starting these video series. I said, Lord, what about Tischendorf? He's got a sterling reputation. Well, in fact, I look at the original copies of my book, Answers to Your Bible Version Questions. I brought it up to, what did Tischendorf actually say? I researched it back. I thought I did the right thing. Yay! It was found in a trash can, and it was because of this, and I went through all this stuff. Look here. It says there was a large basket with remains of damaged manuscripts. By the way, in 1871, he'd started modifying his story. I don't know. 3 years later, he was dead, but it might be that he started to say a little more than he meant to say, and maybe somebody didn't like that. I'm going to get to that in another video I'll do on YouTube. But anyway, there was a large basket with remains of damaged manuscripts. Carillus the librarian told him that the last 2 basketfuls were thrown into the fire. 3, this basketful was the 3rd filling put there to be burned. So I don't have time to go all through it because we only have an hour. 4, he had 43 leaves he got to take, later called the Codex Federico Augustinus. That was the white pages you saw. The white pages. Because they were just going to be thrown into the fire. Those 4 principles. Now, following through in Parker's books, we find out he was in a monastery library in the Sinai Desert. He was surrounded by shelves of printed and handwritten books. According to Tischendorf's own words, he said, I looked through them one by one. In the middle of the library, however, there was also a large basket containing the remains of damaged manuscripts. When I proceeded to examine this, Carillus the librarian remarked that its contents had twice been thrown into the fire. Carillus the librarian said, this therefore was the 3rd filling, which to all appearances was destined for the same end. I could not fail to be astonished when I removed a number of very large parchment sheets of Greek script, whose paleographic appearance, paleography, led me to conclude, not even theorize, not even guess, conclude that they were of the greatest antiquity. A little later he wrote, the basket's destiny rendered it possible for the smaller, loose batch of leaves, 43 of them, to be surrendered to me at my request. He always makes himself look so good. Even when he backed up, remember yesterday that Chris told you that he admitted that he was wrong and he said I was wrong? No, he didn't. That's not what he said. Chris is right, but his wording was different. He really said, I was right the first time. That's what he said. I was right in my first opinion. He never said I was wrong. I don't think he could say that word, even in German. But he could say I was right the first time. My first opinion was correct. Which is, it's genuine. Anyway, so there you go. This is his story. However, in Constantine Tischendorf, The Life and Work of a 19th Century Bible Hunter by Stanley Porter, again, 2015 book, a well-researched pro-Tischendorf book, it says, one, that large basket was not a waste paper basket. You know what it was? Since over 200 AD, people have been using baskets to hold manuscripts, all the way back to ancient Rome and Greece. In fact, in the papal, in the Vatican, there is even a painting of a big basket full of manuscripts in a basket just like it. 2, and he knew that because he'd been there. 2, monks did not throw parchment into the fire. Parchment is nothing but thinly scraped animal hide which burns badly and would stink up the place. It's not paper, guys. Even I was deceived. It's not, and it doesn't burn. It smolders and it stinks. And they wouldn't do that. It's an Orthodox monastery, and it was Greek. Greek Orthodox and Russian Orthodox, they got together, and this monastery had Greek stuff. Would they burn it? Turns out, no. I had to learn a whole lot of stuff I did not know before doing this. Then next, besides, parchment was valuable and almost imperishable. According to this author, it was almost imperishable. So they reused it. They'd scrape it, they'd wash it off, and then they'd rewrite on top of it. That rewrite over a previous thing is called a palimpsest. Tischendorf knew what they were. He just finished making a palimpsest, the Pope as it was. That's why he got to visit the Pope in the first place. Okay? He knew what that was. Framea Rescriptus, the palimpsest that he worked on. And that's another story. I can't have time. Tischendorf, it turns out, became famous when he deciphered that at Framea Rescriptus. So 3, this couldn't have been the third feeling waiting to be burned. Is that true or not true? If they didn't burn any of them, this could not have been the third filling. Yes? Okay, 4. So that means he didn't get the 43 snow white leaves because they were going to be burned. That part is a complete lie, isn't it? 5. Tischendorf lied about what Kyrillos the librarian said then because he said the librarian said these things. Get it? So now his conversation is also a lie. A verified lie. Even the monks back that up. And this is a pro-Tischendorf author giving the evidence. He couldn't have said that they were burning parchment. He couldn't have said 2 other basketfuls of parchment were to be burned. And also, when Tischendorf went, Stephen showed me, when Tischendorf went to talk to the, was it patriarch in Cairo? He's a big religious guy anyway. I think he was a head monk guy, but I think he was a patriarch. He talked to him in Cairo, getting his permission, because you have to get 2 kinds of permission in order to go into the monastery in the first place. Because you go there and there's a rope. And you got to get permission, and it goes up and down, and then you get attached to a rope and get pulled up. I mean, it is a monastery. It's not about, it's not a freeway thing, Come on, drop by. We're a monastery. No, it's like you have to get special permission. You go up through this little entrance. You can watch it in the videos. And the guy there said, "Here, you're a Greek expert? Here, read this." He said he couldn't even read it. And he said his Greek was bad, right? And Tischendorf would only admit, well, my pronunciation was different. European pronunciation. And so the guy writes down and says, okay, you can let him in, but don't let him anywhere near manuscripts. Didn't trust him. Okay, so he couldn't have given Snow White CFA to Tischendorf to save it from the fire. That means he had to get that Snow White CFA some other way. The Codex Frederico Augustanus, those white pages. He had to get the white pages some other way. I think I know how. I had this theory that came up with it. Now it looks like the facts are starting to back it up. And I'm very excited. Because, you know how a kid steals something and they try to make it look like they didn't? I think he cut the pages with a knife very carefully. But he left the first page of what was there in a bound book. He says they were loose. Nope, they were bound. The next year, Porfiry Uspensky, an archimandrite, a high-level Russian religious official, came in, and Tischendorf said, oh, he's stupid, he didn't know anything, and he's just jealous of me. He actually wrote in Old Church Slavonic a full description of what we now know as the Codex Sinaiticus. And it's white pages. After Tischendorf left. Before Tischendorf came back. Does that tell you anything? he was a real expert. And he actually described stuff so much, I actually spent time trying to figure it out. Using all the linguistics, I had to use Bulgarian, Russian, and Slovenian, because I don't know Old Church Slavonic. I actually don't know any of those, or Russian. I don't know any of that stuff. I just used linguistic principles and tried to play with those languages and worked with the text, and then, thank Google. I knew what he found, and it helped, and I actually got it put together, and I checked, and it matches what we had a translator, a Russian translator, Christian missionaries, and they had a friend who had another friend who could do it from Slavonic, Old Church Slavonic into Russian, and another could do it from Russian into English, and get back to me, and they matched. So we're good. So I got that. I haven't published all that yet. But nonetheless, it shows that this was a white manuscript. It was a bound book. It was all together exactly as we find it today. Except for a couple things, but I can't. Deuteronomy 19:15, one witness shall not rise up against a man for any iniquity or for any sin, in any sin that he sinneth, at the mouth of 2 witnesses or at the mouth of 3 witnesses shall the matter be established. I have to find more than one backup for anything I say. And he's not getting his backup. Did you know that every big thing that happened in Tischendorf's amazing life only happened when no one else was there to talk about it? Questions to ask whenever we study something. 1, what happened? 2, who says? 3, who else says? 4, is it possible? We got to go to the realm of possibility. The old Sherlock Holmes things, when you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. Sherlock Holmes, anyway. 5, is it probable? Is it consistent with their behavior? What I started to find out from reading biographies of Tischendorf by people who liked him, and then reading what he actually said when he got into an argument, I found out that I'd been told a bunch of lies about who Tischendorf was. So when I read about Simonides that Chris talks about, I tried to follow, believing he was a liar. Realize, I'm a researcher, I already prejudicially believed he was a liar. I started finding everything he said backing up with history, geography, other histories, histories of the Greek areas, the people he knew, the places he knew, the things he knew, the education he had, the fact that he had a real doctorate, that he really did know what he was doing. He was a paleographer. He was under his uncle, or his great uncle, his mom's uncle. Even a lady in another place wrote a book and doesn't quite get that right. But it's the mother's uncle, not his uncle. But I called my great uncle's uncle. Didn't you guys? And he did that. He always called him Uncle Benedict. And Benedict was his monk name. His real name before that was Bessarion. And I found Bessarion assigned me as a teacher. He taught for 35 years. He retired. He went into a monastery. The story backs up. I looked for the liar Simonides, and I found a guy who told the truth. I looked for the truth teller Tischendorf, and I found a liar. But every modern Bible is based off of Sinaiticus. So now I'll show you one more thing. I only have time for one more. Simonides in 1843, as Chris told you yesterday, created an Epistle of Barnabas. Now, what he did specifically here is while he stayed on Mount Athos, if you have your Bibles, you can do it now if you do really, really fast. Look to where you see Greece. If you have a Bible that has Greece on it, hopefully. I'm not Greece. I mean the country. And if you look, there's Corinth and Thessalonica. Then curve around to see Apollonia, and then right there at by Apollonia and Thessalonica, you'll see a three-fingered glove. Be right there. Even on this tiny little King James, I can see it. 3-fingered glove. This finger is Athos. It's called Mount Athos. It's an actual peninsula. It's the only independent state monastic peninsula in the world. It's apart from governments, except when the Catholics decided to kill people. It was independent for all the Orthodox religions, the ones who weren't supposed to be Catholic. And that's where he was, on Mount Athos. And his uncle was very prominent, very well known, a very brilliant man. Oh, I don't have time to tell you what he was really doing. You'll have to watch the YouTube videos. But nonetheless, did I just do this? Wow. Smoking gun. Here's Barnabas. It was created in Alpha Omega Mu Gamma, which means 1843. That's a year before Tischendorf went to Sinai. Not Sinai, the real one. Sinai, the fake one. St. Catherine's Monastery. This is, however, the time when he was visiting the Pope. And while he had this, I think Simonides wasn't doing his final fixes on Sinaiticus. I think the things he was doing off of Barnabas, he was diverted. And while he was doing all that, he found the seven different versions of Barnabas, put them together, did his little textual thing. I was amazed. I thought this guy was a counterfeiter. I'm going, this is good textual stuff. This is better than Metzger. I'm reading he's got these footnotes and everything. That's the advertisement for it. It appeared. I got it wrong the first time. I thought that was April. It's Greek. It means number. Number 26, August 1st, Alpha Omega Mu Gamma, 1843. There it is right there in the Star of the East. There's an advertisement for it, or an article about it. It tells about how wonderful he is as a son and patriot of his country under the great Benedict that everybody loved. And he was very loved. In fact, when he came back after the Greek War for Independence, he helped rebuild monasteries with his money. Very nice guy. Right here, Simonides Barnabas. I found this by accident. Chapters 1:1 to 5:7a had never been seen by the Western world. Those chapters, when they found other things, 1:1 to 5:7a were not part of them. But Simonides openly said in the introduction, and what you just saw in the Star of the East, he said that it was a brand new, that you could actually see the first chapters in Greek. He published it in 1843. It had a main text compared with 7 other Greek versions of Barnabas in the footnotes, some of them named after the monasteries and others named after people. There's Kalakalu, Onesimu, Iveron, Anctektu, Gaspareos, Mavrikio, and Lavra. Those are the 7 things in the footnotes. So if you look at the footnotes down here, there's Anctektu and there's Gaspareos. Sometimes he has them short, sometimes they're long. You try and fit it. Remember, because you have to type it all up, and we didn't have computers back then. And so here they are doing it, and that's using the very type that was used at the printing press in Smyrna. I know because I have other stuff from there. It's very specific. Remember, I didn't believe this, right? And I made my own chart. Actually, I prayed. Chris was about to put out the movie Bridge to Babylon, and he called me on the phone. I'm driving to work. We're having our Bible driving to work. My son and I driving to Chick in the morning. Went through the entire Bible in 8 years. The first 8 years, went through the whole Bible, just reading a chapter a day, driving to work. It's only 7 miles. It's amazing what you can do. But as I was driving, I prayed because I told him, I said, I'll pray about it. He said, have you done anything with it? I said, I'll pray about it. So I prayed, and I heard made a chart. Make a chart. I can do that. So I made a chart. Made a chart of the choir folio number and all that stuff over here. I made a chart. I went through the exact, that is the Sinaiticus in little speak. That's right off the website. The people who created the text of the Greek in this text like this over at codexsinaiticus.org did it meticulously. They did it excellently. So there's no quarrel. They did an excellent job. Then I wrote the differences in Simonides Barnabas. And then I wrote some other columns about some other information. I compared everything together. And here's what I found. Sinaiticus Barnabas has piles of corrections. If you add up all the corrections in Barnabas, now Barnabas was intended to be part of this New Testament for sure, because you come to Revelation and you come right to here to the end of Revelation, or for you, here on Revelation, and the very next line here, it starts off with Barnabas. It goes right on. So whoever wrote Barnabas wrote the entire New Testament. Do you get me? Whoever wrote Barnabas wrote the entire New Testament of Sinaiticus. It's the same handwriting, except for the corrections, which is another video. But if you add up all the corrections, the little smudges, the little markings, the things in the margins, I checked them myself, okay? I didn't have time to go through the entire thing. I wanted to do this for Chris and get back to him. So I went through 1:1 to 5:7a. I poured myself into it, didn't I, Debbie? Poured myself into this and zoomed in and went through every single correction and every single note that was in those notes about the corrections. If you add up all of them, they're the exact same thing as that main big text of Simonides Barnabas, published in 1843. But that's not all. But let me show you. This is the main text, okay? These are the footnotes. Are you with me? Line, footnotes. Footnotes tell what was in Gaspareos, what was in Enectetu, what was in Onesimu, and it tells you what's in the different texts, the variations from this main text. This main text is, if you took the Sinaiticus and added all the corrections in 1:1 to 5:7a, that is this. You're looking at it. This is the corrected Sinaiticus for Barnabas, 1:1 to 5:7a. So I asked myself another question. Is it possible that down here I'd find the original text of Sinaiticus? Is it possible that one of these has the readings that are actually in Sinaiticus before it was corrected? If you look at the 7 other versions of Barnabas, Gaspareos is the one that matches the Sinaiticus text, which means Gaspareos was used for the Sinaiticus Barnabas, or one exactly like it, which is an amazing coincidence considering there are 7 different versions that are so different. Only Simonides had these. Only Simonides said he made the Sinaiticus. Simonides already published it before Tischendorf even knew about it. That's good evidence that Simonides wrote Barnabas and the rest of the New Testament. That's quite a smoking gun, isn't it? And that's not all. I have more. If you go watch my videos, you can see them, or if you wait a little bit longer, there'll be more. I want you to know, how much time do I have? I have no idea. Emote. All right, I'm sorry. I have to tell you, at the end of today, please stay around, because when we come back before the second or after the second, I don't know, we'll have to decide. We'll do it, all those names you put in there. I'm going to give out those books. I want all those books out. The tracts, I told you the story because I want you to give out tracts. I want you to get blessings in heaven. Those tracts are for you. They're not for me. I can't take them home, okay? They're not mine anymore. It's like when I worked in the bookstore. I worked with $80,000 in a book rush. And I went, that's cool, but that's not mine. I can work with it easy. It's not mine. And I get my meager little paycheck. That's mine. Those aren't mine. I brought them for you. Please, if you want them, take them. Don't go, I don't know. Take one. If you take one of each, because I got $250 each. So I really tried to consider you guys. You guys matter to me. Can we pray? Father, in Jesus' name, I pray you prepare us for what is next, for getting from Chris what he's going to say, and then as both of us wind it up and start moving into what this has to do with One World Bible for One World Religion and what everything's coming to in the end times. Thank you, Father. Bless us in Jesus' name.